What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Devy Royale podcast. We are back breaking down week 3 reactions, talking a little Devy questions, and looking at an old Devy mock draft and kind of compare, like, based on that draft, how did it went? And then should we be worried? Should we kind of be concerned about some of your Devy picks out there? Donovan Edwards comes to mind, some of those guys, and, the regular shenanigans. It's just me. We got Jay Stein, our analytical guru, and we got Christian, our film guru. Jeff Bell is not here because he is not about that life anymore. He could not stay up late enough. He could not hang. So Jeff Bell's not going to be here. And I am here. And according to Christian, I am the Danny Cannell of this show. So I'm glad I could be here with you guys. And the SEC is overrated. That's where we're going there. So we're going to hit the intro, hit that like button, and then dive into the chat. If you guys have some stuff to going on, if you're watching live, if you listen to the podcast, we do go live around 8 p.m. my time, which is 11 p.m. Eastern time for you guys if you guys want to tune in. All right, let's get into it. I want to kind of do a live game recap, a little bit, just what's going on. So if you're listening, I think the game everybody's kind of watching, and we're also watching while this is going. Colorado State, Colorado, right now in the first quarter, Colorado State's up 14-7, and honestly, it could have been a little bit more, but they kind of choked in the red zone when they gave up a pick six. So when we're thinking of this game, how bad do we want Colorado to lose, Christian? On a scale of 1 to 10, where are you at?
I'm at like a 9. This team is starting to bother me a little bit, and it's unfortunate because I think some of the antics from the coaches and that whole situation is kind of boiling into this game right now. Colorado State's hitting late. There's been like 3 or 4 scuffles and almost fights already, which
in the first
I don't think that's good for the game, and I think that was very much so cultivated by the two coaches. So I don't know. Take that for what you will. I don't think Colorado is that good of a football team either, but that's a take that I probably shouldn't say on here because people get mad at me. So I don't know.
What do you think, Jay? How do you feel about Colorado? We haven't had your.
I don't know. I'm indifferent. Like, it's nice to see people do well. But when it gets to be too much hype, then you kind of get to the point where it's like, oh well. But the game next week against Oregon. I think that's gonna probably put the nail in the coffin there. It would be my opinion. Of the really inflated hype, but really honestly indifferent. I want to see the good players that are NFL caliber players do well always. It doesn't bother me if you have the swagger or whatever, but it's just like let's see them go up against Oregon and see what happens, and at that point we'll make our opinions there.
Yeah. Now, other games that I'm dying right now. Arkansas is down 38-31 to BYU. They're driving though. It looks like so they're trying to go out there. It's 4th and 18 though at the BYU 42. That's not looking good for Arkansas. SEC team losing to BYU is definitely not going to be in there. Georgia struggled a little bit today against South Carolina. Oregon's up right now. Stanford, Sacramento State. It's 23-23. So Pac-12 Stanford not looking good. Is little homecoming for Stanford coach. He used to coach there. Clemson 48-7. Kate Klubnik had 3 touchdowns. TCU's up on Houston. Houston continues to struggle, and I think that's something that we're going to have to look into. Holgerson cannot stay there very much longer. Colorado just tied it up. It's 14-14 there. Arizona State, my Bulldogs up 10-0 on Arizona State. I'm telling you guys, Fresno State might be a team. Kansas up 7-0. Outside of that, no other games are going. So we're just going to kind of anything on any of those games. You guys got anything for those?
No. 4th scuffle already in the 2 minutes. Since
we might not make it in this Colorado State game.
They might call this game if they keep fighting. I mean, I don't know. So yeah, nothing on the other games. Oregon is up big. You like to see that. I'm excited to see this matchup, like Jay was saying, with Colorado next week.
Yeah, now let's talk into something a little bit even more depressing. Alabama's quarterback room. So Alabama struggled this today, and it looked like Alabama at the time was, against South Florida, who was 1-2, is not a very good football team. It looked like maybe bounce back. I know the weather was bad. There was a weather delay that came out. So here's what the quarterbacks did. Ty Simpson came in, was 5 for 9, 73 yards. But according to Christian, he did not look that great. Tyler Bunkner was out there, 5 for 14, 34 yards. Milroe did not get the start. He did not play. As far as on the ground, Roydell Williams, stepped up, a touchdown, 129 yards. Jace McClellan looked fine, 13 carries, 74 yards. But that quarterback room is nasty. So when we're thinking of this, are any of these guys Devy relevant? Because all three were getting drafted. Well, maybe not Tyler, but Ty Simpson and Milroe were getting drafted. Simpson a little higher than Milroe. But are we looking at these guys as being kind of washed and just going to have to see it? I made a joke that Ty Simpson was going to be playing for Rice next year.
I don't think there's Devy quarterbacks in this room at this point. I think you kind of hold out hope for Ty Simpson, but you mentioned he was 5 for 9, 73 yards, took 5 sacks. It wasn't good. He added a touchdown on the ground, but it just, he should have been, if he's a guy, I would think that he would get the nod over Buckner, because that was an atrocity. What they trotted out there in that first half was disgusting. That you can't convince me that either one of those guys was outplaying Milroe in practice. It was almost like I did see that it's a quarterback battle again, and Milroe's back involved, and I think Milroe's probably going to end up being the starter again, and we're going to look back at this USF game and say, what in the world were you doing? Why didn't you just stick with Milroe? But I don't know. I do hold out hope that Milroe can kind of develop, because he's got the crazy tools, and I think we saw some good things from him last week. But this quarterback, it's Julian Sand next year, I think, and I think that once he's there, I don't think we're talking about these guys anymore. And it's unfortunate, because I'd like to see what Dylan Lonergan has. Eli Holstein, I think, is the other kid there. So I don't know. I'm kind of out on Alabama quarterbacks until they show us that we should be back in on them.
Yeah. Are you out on anybody, Jay? Are you in on anybody of those guys?
No, I was kind of holding out hope for Ty Simpson there too for a while. Just because of the recruiting pedigree, and we hadn't seen him yet, and now we're seeing him. I think a lot of times, though, with young guys, with quarterbacks, you have to give them time to develop. So sometimes it takes a little bit of time before they get, the rounds. But they had Tyler go before Ty Simpson this game, and so if he wasn't able to win the job over Tyler, then you just gotta kind of imagine where that room is sitting. I'm still, I guess, would have a little bit of hope, but I don't on Ty. But I'm just, it would be, I'm not paying anything for it. It would just be kind of like holding on to him, but not like going out and trying to trade for these guys. You mentioned the 2 freshman quarterback that I don't know if we'll see them this year, and if we go back to Jalen Monroe, probably wouldn't see them. We'd probably stick with him for the rest of the season. But it's just I'm not a huge Alabama fan, just personally, but it's kind of sad to see where we are in the Alabama quarterback room. Alabama has been a winning team regardless of quarterback play, and I think that this quarterback room will get them in trouble, and they might lose more than just one game, more than maybe 2 games this season if this continues. So they got a stout defense, they got a lot of studs everywhere, but if you can't get average QB play, it's going to be rough for them. So
it definitely hurts the other pieces too. Wide receivers, the talent out there that's on that roster. Like, it's hard to figure out where the heck we're going with those guys. I do like this question from John. We appreciate you jumping in. Said, with how Florida State played. So Florida State did not play well. They almost lost. I know Jordan Travis kind of got banged up. He came back in to Boston College, and they won 31-29. He said, "Would you think my Huskies are going to move up?" And I wanted to go to Michael Penix Jr. anyway. I'm going to be talking about him as we go through here. Michael was 27 for 35 for 473 yards again and 4 touchdowns. And I got to give Christian credit, because he was on him very early, last year, right? Before the season even started, he said, hey, he could play a little bit. He's, when you're looking at his season, his numbers this year, he's had over 400 yards every single game. 473 was a season high. When you're looking at just, overall 12 touchdowns, 1 interception. I'm not going to do the math yet, but it's almost 1,300 yards passing already through 3 games, which is unheard of. Like, that is just, even Jay understands that in his algorithms. Like, that's a lot. And even though he's old, Jay, I don't know. When you're looking at how old he is, I think this is going to break his model, because this is 6th year this year. So I guess question to Christian first. Do you think they can jump over Florida State? I don't know if they're going to get the Florida State bump yet, because they played a Michigan State team that was kind of reeling with all the controversy. And then the second one is Michael for real? Do we think he could be a first rounder?
First question, I don't think they bump all the way up that high. I I think that they get a little bit of a bump. I don't think Florida State. I think Florida State probably holds despite the disappointing play. It was kind of a setup week though. It was kind of a look ahead week for Florida State. I think they have Clemson next week, and so I think that a lot of people didn't put that into account, and the betting line was super high, and so I think that's why people were kind of surprised that that was the outcome today. In terms of what Penix can be, I do question it because so this is one where like I'd love to know what scouts are saying about this, because if you get past the injuries and you get comfortable with his mechanics being a little off, and you see through the Kalen DeBoer offense and try to sift through if Michael Penix is actually for real, I think that he has first round potential. Now, there are a lot of different factors that go into that. Kalen DeBoer's offense is very quarterback friendly, I guess is how I would call it. It's a very easy system to read out. And I think that while Penix has shown like he can place the ball 50 yards downfield on a dot, like perfectly, I think that you do get a little bit concerned about the structure of that offense and what that means. And is that really translatable to the NFL? There are some people who are still super in on him, and I still am too. I mean, I do love the kid. I think he's a very, very talented kid. It's just I don't know how much weight is going to go into the multiple injuries. It's going to go into the offense being a little fake. But Connor Rogers over at NBC and Pro Football Focus, I don't know where he's at anymore. He's leading the hype train for Penix still, and saying like he could become a first rounder, a top 10 pick even. So, Jay, I know your model probably doesn't love him, but the caveat with the model, I assume, is that he lost a lot of playing time because of those injuries. And so it's not like he's been here for 6 years and hasn't been good. Now I don't know if that's how Jay's model works. So Jay, why don't you take it away?
Yeah, I mean, and you can get this if you're in the Devy Royal Patreon. If you go to if you're in the Discord, if you go to that Discord channel, you can click in here and look at it. The old quarterbacks in before the season started, my model was saying Bo Nix over Michael Penix Jr. and I think it's still like slightly leaning that way. But I do understand a lot of the numbers, they come with the caveats, like there is context to looking at this stuff, and the multiple injuries I think does play in a little bit, but we're still talking about I think this is going to be his fifth year, right? Or is this his sixth year? Sixth year.
Yeah.
Generally, like the odds of that happening, injuries or not, is probably pretty low. And okay, so you're going to make an exception on this one time. So you're betting on sort of that outlier. That's not the type of bet that I try and make. There's nothing really that stands out other than the fact that, when I'm looking for these age adjusted production metrics, the line gets higher and higher each year. And so he has this higher level that he has to attain by his sixth year. And he's not necessarily hitting those things, especially with the injuries that he had early in his career. But there's nothing really that stands out on the overall perspective. So he has a good adjusted completions percentage. When you look at the big time throws and versus turnover where he plays, he looks good. So it's just the fact that he's a little bit older. That's why it doesn't spit that out. But everything else kind of looks good. One thing that I think is pretty interesting this year, he's off to a really hot start, and he's carrying 3 Devy wide receivers and making them relevant, which is really cool. Not every quarterback that we've been looking at here is able to do that consistently with 3 guys. And Rome Odunze, Jalen McMillan, and Jalen Polk have all basically every game done really well. So he's doing a good job of distributing the ball to his playmakers, and you like to see that. And I can understand why people are getting hyped on him. I just personally would rather make the bet on maybe the younger guys like JJ McCarthy or Riley Leonard or some of those guys that perform really well at a younger age and maybe didn't necessarily have to deal with some of those injuries. So that's kind of how I look at it.
Quickly, sorry. So all three of Michael Penix, Bo Nix, and Jordan Travis will be 24 before their first NFL snap. So worth noting. Even looking at like older quarterbacks that were drafted highly, I think Burrow was a little older, but he was 22, I think, when he got drafted. These guys, so Penix's birthday is in May. So Bo Nix turns 24 in February. Jordan Travis turns 24 in May. So they almost will be 24 on draft night. It'll be cutting it pretty close there. So worth noting.
Yeah, Bo will be 24 on before
on draft
night.
night. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's
not ideal.
To be honest,
Not ideal.
We've been watching this football for a long time. This might be the oldest quarterback class we've seen because of the COVID years and everything. It's got to be, right?
Yeah.
This is going to be the last like super impacted quarterback class in terms of the COVID year. I think. I think after this we're gonna get out of that. I kind of hope. I mean, even Spencer Rattler kind of falls into that category. He's a fifth year. Yeah, I mean. It's just this is definitely an older class, but that's why I think people are so in on the younger guys. Another old guy. Good transition for you, Kevin. You want to talk about Joe Milton?
I do want to maybe apologize to Roman Dunze first. I may have not been as high as I should have been on you. And his brother's super mad at me somewhere on Twitter right now. But I will say, 8 catches, 180 yards, really good. Jalen Polk is a guy that I love, and I talked about him before the season with Jay when we did our sleepers. He had another good game, 5 catches, 118 yards, a touchdown. He's a guy to watch. I think he's that one guy that I think about as someone's maybe value kind of rising out there. But yeah, let's get into Milton. Let's talk about Joe Milton. So Joe Milton, the numbers might say now he had a good game, but he did not have a great game. Game script kind of dictated what he did here at the second half. 287 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Tennessee lost 29-16 to a Florida Gators team that looked awful. They had looked bad, and then now they lose in there. From a wide receiver perspective, Brew McCoy did have 5 catches, 94 yards, and a touchdown. But Joe Milton's not that guy. And Joe Milton is not a Devy quarterback. And people were drafting him kind of as such. And even in our Discord tonight, people were like, wasn't he compared to Anthony Richardson? Maybe, but that was a terrible comparison. And I'm bad
by us.
But he was not on us on our side because we all said Joe Milton was not good. And I've watched Joe Milton personally at Michigan. I've seen it. I knew that his limitations there. I am surprised they haven't gone to Nico, the true freshman 5-star quarterback. Honestly, I don't know. Maybe they see him practice. Maybe he's not ready. But Milton's not that guy. And then I tweeted out the Spider-Man meme with the glasses, and he's actually Kellen Mond. But that was probably pretty disrespectful for Kellen Mond because Kellen Mond was actually, at least he led his team pretty close that last year to maybe almost a playoff appearance. But I mean, we've all kind of known, especially Christian. He talked about Milton just being not the guy for a long time.
Yeah. I mean, and I watched him in week 1 and said, did they have a week 0 game? Week 1 or week 0? Yeah. And I said, oh yeah, we're done. This is done. I'm glad we had a summer full of hope that he had grown as a quarterback. But we just talked about the old guys. Joe Milton's also one of those old guys that just had never shown anything. Really, the thing that is appealing about him is his arm strength. But the thing that is a very big negative about him is his arm strength. The kid doesn't know how to throw with touch all the time. There are a lot of things wrong with his game. And I don't want to, I'm glad they kind of let him come back into that game. In the second half, I was calling for Nico, but I mean, I think that was a good experience for him. But you're right, Kev. This isn't he's just going to be the Tennessee quarterback this year, and then Nico's going to take over, and that's pretty much the end of it. I think Joe Milton probably gets drafted day 3, maybe. But even then, it's just what he's putting on film this year just isn't good enough. No. And we was getting first-round buzz this summer. That was crazy. I saw him in the top 10 of a mock draft in May.
Yeah, it was PFN. Let's just shout it out. It was PFN.
Yeah, rough. Don't love that. Didn't love it then. He's not going to sniff the first round, I don't think. Jay, the model agrees. I know that, right?
I rank 30 some quarterbacks this summer, and Joe Milton was last. Which is
okay.
Which is something to say. There, it's largely based on production, and there's only a couple of things that he did in his last year that worked it. But he was my last one that I ranked out of the 30. So, I was kind of there with you guys.
That's all that needs to be said. That's really it. Like, that's all we got to talk about. Like, if he's last in Jay's model, then he's last in my model as well. Because I mean, he was already down there. I think with just the arm strength, you'd have to say if he clicked, fine. But someone asked in the Discord, they said, what? I haven't watched Joe Milton this year, or I haven't seen him. Like, what? Why were people so on him? I was like, well, he has arm, but it's not particularly to his right receivers. Like, I just think that's something there. I do think on the Florida side, Trevor Etienne, 23 carries, 172 yards, 1 touchdown. We needed that Etienne performance that we were hoping for this year. That was good. And I think if they're going to be that, and he kind of took it over from Montrell Johnson. Montrell only had 12 carries tonight. And then Eugene Wilson is a guy to know. I think he went out. I think he got injured, but the true freshman wide receiver from Florida, if you're looking for like that guy, like that slot guy that can create openings and create separation, Eugene's going to be that guy in that offense. Jay, real quick though, because we had a comment on here I have to ask. Do you drive a Subaru?
I do. I'm disappointed that
Jay looks like he drives a Subaru and is at the cookouts telling you where to find the
correct,
best
Sean. Sean, you are correct.
That's awesome. Like this question too. Any thoughts about what Washington State and Oregon State becoming Pac-2 for the next 2 seasons, then maybe adding teams to other conferences to expand? I absolutely love the idea of them next year saying F you to everybody, playing all like an independent schedule, then playing each other for the championship, and then just raking in that money. Because I think they can make the money from their deal there. I think that's an awesome area there. I do think that, with the Mountain West, and these guys will laugh because they know I'm a Mountain West guy, but I think that the Mountain West is competitive enough. Like, they're kind of SOL, like they got to join. Like, I think that the Mountain West Conference commissioner, I can't think of her name off the top of my head, but she's excellent. She's an excellent commissioner. I think they'll just take her in. I think it's going to be some type of merger where they kind of come together. They take the Pac-12 rights, and basically the Mountain West becomes the Pac-12. And then they maybe can add some teams after that. I think that's the best case scenario for Oregon State and Washington State, which is sad because Oregon State's actually built a pretty good program there. They look very good, and in Washington State as well. But that would be the idea. But I do want like them to say F you next year and just play each other. Like, that would be the best scenario.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that they are very clearly upset with how everything was handled too. And I like that. I mean, they're suing the Pac-12, right?
Yeah.
Like that's what's happening. So, or maybe the other teams that I don't know exactly the details of the lawsuit, but good for them. I hope that's what happens. And I hope they just call themselves co-conference champions. Actually, I don't even want them to say who wins the conference. You just co-champions.
Yeah, no, I think, that's how I would I would say it there. I think that, but shout out to them. I hope they have a really good year. They play each other next week. That's going to be a heck of a game. I think Washington State, Oregon State at Washington State is going to be a lot of fun. Let's jump over. I did want to touch on this, but we are going to go over a Devy draft of what happens here in a minute. But Drew Aller looks really good. And I know he didn't have like crazy numbers today, 16 for 33, 208 yards, but I think it's what he didn't do. Didn't really throw any picks. I would say that his interceptable throws for PFF grades are probably not going to be very high. He just makes balls. Like, I think for some people, he can just make, he can make balls to the sidelines. He can make throws where they need to go there. I'm a big fan of Aller. I think where do you have him rank right now, Jay, in just Devy quarterbacks overall? Do you know?
Devy quarterbacks.
Overall,
I have to look it up real quick.
Christian, do you know?
I think we're gonna have him the top of that class. That's the 2025 class. So he'll be the top of that class.
Where would you put him in 24? Around Drake May?
You know what's interesting is Drake May was my full ahead number 2 quarterback with Caleb Williams. And this season is giving me a little bit of pause on Drake May. So I'm not sure if he needs to be in tier 1 or if he needs to get moved down to tier 2. I have a hard time putting Aller at this moment above Drake May and Quinn and JJ McCarthy. Maybe like where Quinn Ewers is, maybe. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I need to update my W rankings. That's what I think.
Me too. I do.
I
do too.
So I would put him in the Drake May, JJ McCarthy tier. I think that's its own tier right now. I know JJ had a terrible game turning the ball over after I tweeted how he's been the best quarterback in college football. The classic jinx that I put out on Twitter. But JJ has looked fantastic. I think, like, based on what they have done early in their careers, like, I think Aller's on a better pace to take that next step. Now, I wouldn't say that we've seen that pace kind of taper off. I'm intrigued to see what happens when Aller gets good defenses like Michigan, and I think we can throw Ohio State in there. Those are going to be the tests, and that's why I haven't quite updated everything, because I do want to see a little bit more sample size. But overall, I mean, this is the top of the class next year. I know Mel Kiper is trying to push out that Shedeur Sanders is. He's not. Drew Aller is better. And if you watch them both play every week, I think that's clear. But yeah, good quarterback. Played well today. Wasn't the cleanest game. There were times where he could have held his reads a little bit longer, not taking his checkdowns. But that comes with experience. Kyle McCord had that happening the first 2 weeks, and he didn't really have that happen today. So I think that we're going to see some growth out of Aller too.
Yeah, I think I want to be hot takey and put him in the May tier. I think he's pretty close. Yeah. I think I think he's there. May had a pretty good game today. May also throws a lot of interceptable passes.
He didn't last year.
He's regressed a little bit.
Yeah. So we got through week 1, right? The South Carolina game. And everyone was talking about, oh my gosh, look at him. He can create. They completely ignored that when the ball was put in his hands to close the game out, he threw 2 picks, not 1, but 2 picks. They were both his fault. And then, similar stuff today. He's turning the ball over. I'm charting, guys. He's still right there with Caleb, but the interceptable stuff is certainly much higher for him than it is with Caleb. So I get why Jay has some pause. I think the film is still really good, but I think we can put to rest the Drake May QB1 stuff, can't we? Please.
Yes. Yeah, we can put that away. I think the difference. So the thing about, if you're new to the show, if you're listening or on the podcast and stuff, Jay has a lot of he has risk baked involved in his takes, where I am just full blown. I don't give a shit. I am just going to roll with it, and I'm just going to throw it out. I think, just from a perspective, I think Christian's point about where JJ is and Drew Aller, and I've watched every single game JJ has played. So I'm just telling you guys, even in high school, I watched almost all, because I knew he was coming to Michigan. So I'm probably one of the biggest JJ stands out there. Drew Aller is a better quarterback, in my opinion. I think just from a projection of the NFL, I think Drew Aller is a better NFL projection quarterback. I think JJ is fine. And Jay really likes JJ. Like, Jay's like JJ probably. Like, I think I'm like a pessimist when it comes to Michigan quarterbacks. Always, like, I just get worried about it. So I definitely have that going there. But Aller he screams NFL guy. Like, and I know there's takes out there that Shedeur Sanders should be above Aller in that class if he came back. I don't think that's true. I think Aller should be that guy in that area in a class that, doesn't have a ton of quarterbacks right now in that 2025 class. But I thought there was good throws. The thing that I'm always worried about with Aller is Franklin. James Franklin is head coach, because I don't like the game plans that much. I think that's my biggest thing with the game plans. Why are you laughing, Jay? Why are you laughing at us?
No, I agree. QBR, EPA per play, adjusted yards per attempt, all look good for Drew Aller this year. So, like, we're on the right path.
Yeah.
So I think the context that I have is that generally you can't, from the numbers perspective, you can't make decisions based on just like 3 games or 2 games in this case. You really need to see the whole season from my perspective to see, like, if this is going to work out. And I'll gladly be a little bit more patient, as opposed to jumping in and saying like all in type of thing. And that's kind of my mentality there. It's just, let's see it for half a season. Let's see it for, as opposed to a couple games. That's just why I was laughing.
I just need 1 game. I got 1 game, and I'm out here. No, I'm just kidding. I don't do that. But I will say, like, I think there is talent. And I do think that my love for Aller comes from his high school tape, because when you watched it, you're like, oh, wow. Like, it's just something different. It popped off. So kind of what he can do. But I do want to bring up this guy, and I hate that I have to bring up Ohio State quarterback, but we're going to talk about Ohio State quarterback. Christian did a great video on our YouTube channel. Go check it out before this game dropped today. And to Christian's credit, he's been really high on McCord, way more than Ohio State fans are. Can we talk about Ohio State fans too, since actually Jay's an Ohio State fan, but he's a rational Ohio State fan. I don't understand this narrative where Ohio State, was supposed to fall off the face of the planet. They're still a top 10 team. McCord is out here. He went 318 yards, 3 touchdowns today. He looked really good. Travion Henderson looked good too. 13 carries for 88 yards. I actually saw someone talk about Travion Henderson not having good inside run ability. That is blasphemous. And that is not good analysis. Travion Henderson can run in between the tackles. He is solid today. He finally had those 2 touchdowns. Marvin Harrison Jr. is great. Emeka had 2 touchdowns, not a ton of yards, but Kyle McCord looked absolutely phenomenal today. What do you think of Kyle McCord today, Christian, as you just dropped the video today? Is that what you expected from him?
Yep, that's exactly what I expected. And I'm glad that he did it, because it would have looked really dumb dropping a video 4 hours before the game if he went out there and he was terrible. But no, signs of this type of play were on the week 1 film. And then they were more on the week 2 film when I went back and watched that. And so all of the things that you see, I mean, even there was a point, I think I said it in the video, but I think he was throwing with better anticipation than CJ Stroud was in his first couple of starts. I think CJ Stroud was a see it and throw it type of guy. Kyle McCord, he was a little off with some of the throws because the timing and the rhythm and things like that weren't down yet, but he was trying to throw with anticipation. And that's not something you see from new starters normally. I know he's a little older compared to what Stroud was. Stroud was a redshirt freshman, right? Or a true sophomore or something like that. McCord has an extra year of being in the offense, and I think that's a good thing. But overall, Ohio State fans were certainly freaking out about the quarterback battle, and I think part of that is because it took so long for the quarterback battle to finish, but it didn't. The quarterback battle ended a while ago, and Ryan Day told Devin Brown that he had a chance to win it so that he would stay in school and be the backup, because he isn't comfortable with anyone else as the backup there. That's my theory, because when you watch the two play, you can tell, okay, McCord has it. McCord has a grasp on the offense a little bit at a higher level. He was good. He's going to be good. At the end of the video, I said, I think he's probably going to be in Heisman discussions. I think we're there. I think maybe Marvin Harrison Jr. might get some of that credit when the Heisman voters are voting, but I think McCord's going to be right there. There was that graphic of every Ohio State quarterback has finished inside the top 10 under Ryan Day, and I think McCord's probably the next in line, if I had to guess.
Where you at with McCord, Jay? Did you watch the game today?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my bad. I didn't know you.
You watched all of them, of course.
Yeah, of course I do. The Buckeyes came to play with juice today. It was the first game that really things were clicking. There was one early turnover by McCord where there was a strip sack from him, but he bounced back really, really good from that and started throwing touchdowns, and it looked really sharp. It looked like it's supposed to at Ohio State. And next week we have a game against. Ohio State has a game against Notre Dame, and that'll be the big test so far of the season. But it's nice to see Ohio State start clicking there from a quarterback position, which I think has, in my opinion, has struggled a bit for the first few games. But Kyle McCord looked really good today. Going into the season, I was kind of high on Kyle McCord because of the age type of thing, and then Ohio State and Ryan Day. Ryan Day does a great job of developing quarterbacks. We've seen it over and over again. The thing that separates Kyle McCord from some of the other running backs or other quarterbacks that are younger, or some of the others, is that he has the weapons all around him. He doesn't have to win the games. He just has to facilitate the ball to the open person. And there's definitely open people, because you've got Marvin Harrison, you got Emeka Egbuka, and a bunch of other really great pass catchers and running backs. And it's just about sort of like an execution of the game plan and getting the ball to your playmakers, because he doesn't have the pressure of carrying the weight of the team on his shoulders. He just has to get him to his amazing and playmakers around the field. And I think that's an easy setup for a quarterback. There's tremendous pressure at Ohio State to win games, and a lot of that falls on the quarterback. But given this experience, there's other quarterbacks, there's our younger quarterbacks that come into situations where the setup isn't as great. And I think CJ Stroud and some of the other quarterbacks have benefited from the playmakers and the talent around them, and especially the pass catchers. And I think this is a situation where Kyle McCord is able to step in there, maybe, kind of not necessarily hit the ground running immediately, but now I think we're getting into that groove, and he has the weapons and talent around him to, even if he's having not that great of a game, to still do fairly well. So today was a changing point for me on Kyle McCord. Today we saw, I think, something a little bit different. Now, Christian mentioned he made his throws in those first few games, and you could see that there was the talent developing. But today, I think, was something different. Today, I think that they're locked in. They're playing at a different level than they were the previous 3 games.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. I don't care about Ohio State. Like I think they are locked in. Big game next week, Notre Dame. Like, what can they do? I think that's going to be the big game for them. It's at Notre Dame as well. So when you're thinking of what the game's going, I think, right? Yeah, it's at Notre Dame. Let me check.
That's it.
Yeah, it's at Notre Dame. No, it's at Notre Dame. Yeah. So you're looking at that. I mean, that's part of the deal. Like, we'll see how he kind of steps up there. Chip Trayanum, or Trey, I don't know how to say his last name.
Trayanum. Chip Trayanum.
Linebacker. He looks pretty good as a runner. 5 for 56 for a touchdown. He averaged 11 yards a carry today, and we kind of been talking about him as you go. Like, if they beat Notre Dame next week, I think it's going to really be. I think that run game is definitely going to have to step up. If Travion looks this good, Travion's still running back 1, right, boys? Like, we're not moving off of the Travion.
Yeah, always was.
Well,
I mean, Braylon Allen is probably up there for Jay, but it's close at least. But
yeah, I had a couple guys. I had Raheem.
You didn't have Braylon Allen that high, did you?
I had Raheem Sanders pretty high,
and that's okay.
Braylon Allen is up there too. I understand watching him and seeing something different than a running back, but when you're looking at the numbers, he looks really good, and he's really young. So
he was good today too.
You're subtweeting Jeff Bell, and he's not even on the show. Did you hear that? He's really good. He deserves that.
But I mean, like, I don't know how you can argue. You can say like, this doesn't translate to the NFL, and sure, that's fine, and that'll come out in the draft capital piece of this. If we get to NFL draft season and nobody wants to take a shot at him as being their running back, or it doesn't feel like they can use him to do really well, then he won't get drafted. But the numbers wise, even his freshman year, sophomore year, and then this year, he's putting up numbers that meet what you're looking for. So yeah. I understand if you don't think he's an NFL running back, but we'll see. He's size wise, speed wise, like it makes a lot of sense. So yeah. If he doesn't get 3rd round draft capital or higher, then I'll probably be a lot lower on him. But numbers wise, it makes sense. So
Travion's faster than him though, which that's why Travion's RB1. Yeah. I think
Travion's the fastest guy in this class.
I think he's going to run borderline sub 4.4. Borderline. Maybe not quite. It depends if it's at the Ohio State Pro Day or the Combine.
Jay, what do you think he runs it in? Travion.
Oof. Hold on.
No, get off your numbers. Don't be looking at your speed score numbers.
I have it in here. Hold on.
I'm going to say 4.42. I'm going
okay.
high.
I got
or low.
Yeah, I got it. I got him in there as a 4.42.
Oh,
wow, great.
So the one thing I noticed on Travion was like the burst is back, man.
Yes,
these last 2 games. So last year was very, very disappointing. There was an injury. We didn't actually know exactly what or how bad the injury was, but when he was playing, you could tell there was something different than what we saw from in his freshman year. And maybe at the beginning of the season, it was maybe just sort of like we're kind of getting the rust off and whatnot. but these last 2 games, the burst is very back. And so you can see this is what it looked like when he was a freshman.
Yes.
When he was putting up those like ungodly numbers. It's there now.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to see what he does at Notre Dame.
That touchdown he had where he kind of broke it to the outside a little bit, like he went inside out. I forget which one it was. That was prime TreVeyon Henderson. Like that was freshman TreVeyon Henderson where it scared the shit out of me every time he touched the ball, like as a Michigan fan. Like that was TreVeyon Henderson. I remember if he can do that, I'm all aboard, man. I don't understand it. Like, you know, I don't get like the hate on him. I think some running back gurus are just, they find it cool to kind of, they pick guys.
Yeah, but the running back guru, David Wilsey, commented. I said, "Oh yeah, TreVeyon's still RB1," and he replied, "Yep." So that's all that matters.
Yeah. If you guys don't follow him, if you're watching and listening, there's I gotta get his at right now because it's at Wilson WILLSON 8 TOR. David Wilsey. He is the best running back model that I know of, and he's not an asshole. He's a great guy that cares and he doesn't like pretend like he knows everything. But he has some of the best stuff. He has his own Patreon as well. And you don't have to sign up for whatever, but he jumps a ton of content out there. And he does that. He has a model, like the transparency model. You'll see it on there, how it works. Like he's the dude. Like he hits on these running backs a lot and he likes TreVeyon. That means I like TreVeyon. That's kind of how that works.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Me too.
Yeah. I like your model too, Jay. Sorry. Go ahead, Christian.
I was gonna say, do we want to talk about another running back here, Audric?
Yeah, if you want to. Yeah. We'll talk about Audric and then we'll get into some of the mocks that we had. Audric looks good from Notre Dame. It's gonna be interesting to see what he does next week into Ohio State. That's kind of my barometer for him. I don't want to move him too high up on my big board yet. Until I see kind of how he looks, but when you're looking at just the raw numbers for Audric in 4 games this year, he's had his lowest rushing total is 95, and he's had 3 straight 100-yard games. And again, it's against Navy, Tennessee State, North Carolina State, Central Michigan. We're not talking about dominant run defenses here, but he looks really good. He had an 80-yard touchdown last week. He had a 40-yard touchdown this week. He's solid, and it's kind of one of those things. Is like, how close is he to Braylon? Or how close is he to some of these guys? I was asking both of these guys as I'm doing my big board tonight, because I love pain and I love Twitter yelling at me. So I have Shipley, I have Will Shipley, Devin Neal, Braylon Allen, and Audric Estime, all pretty close to each other. And remember, this is based on fantasy though. So this is fantasy production. That's why Neal and Shipley would be up there because of pass catching. But does that feel like the proper cohort or Donovan Edwards, who's really slowing down? Like, I think maybe we should have a conversation about him. What are we doing with Audric in this area?
I mean, the film's good. The numbers are good. I think that when you look back, you know, he was getting some NFL draft buzz too. And I think that we're going to see some good capital. He, you know, I don't know that he declares this year though. He reminds me a bit of like Charbonnet go back for another year, but he's only is he a redshirt sophomore or true junior?
No, he's a true junior. Let me check. I'm pretty sure he's a true junior.
Because remember he got hurt. So did they redshirt him the year? This is only his second year playing, right? I'm not crazy.
So in 2021 he played 2 games, but he played the bowl game. So I don't know if he was redshirted. So I think
I don't know if it. See, but I don't. Does that matter?
Oh wait, no, the 4 games doesn't matter anymore. So yeah, I guess it could come back if he wanted to.
Now I don't know if he will. The state of the Notre Dame program is certainly still up in the air. I think they're gonna get their first loss next week, and maybe they beat Clemson and everyone rallies back, but they also just don't have a good line for a quarterback. Kenny Minchie, I think I like, but I think he'd be smart to declare if he's getting some of that buzz. Now, we had this conversation about him a little bit last week, and Jeff was like, yeah, you made a really nice play in the backfield, made a guy miss. And I talked about, yeah, but once he gets going, he can't make guys miss. He runs through contact extremely well, but he's not an overly elusive guy. I don't know how his elusive ratings are coming out on Pro Football Focus. I'm sure Jay will load that in if he hasn't already. But I do wonder what the NFL is going to say about a straight line big back when we kind of know how they've transitioned. Jahmyr Gibbs was a first round pick. Some of these smaller guys are getting more consideration. So I'm skeptical, but also like that feels like the right cohort, Kevin. Like in watching the 2 players, I would have Audric Estime ahead of Braylon Allen. in film grade, for what it's worth. So
Where are you at with him, Jay?
Yeah, so the elusive grade for year 1 was a 90 and year 2 was a 97.3. I don't have the latest year. It's only
So
3
for
games
those that
in,
don't know
but
what elusive rating is, where do you want to
yeah.
be at?
So the threshold that I look for is like around 120, 125 is what
Okay.
I'm looking for. If you're above 100, you're kind of feeling pretty good about it, but less than that, and you're kind of it's doesn't meet that threshold, so you wouldn't get credit for that. But Audric, I have him in here as a September 6, 2023. I'm sorry, 2003 birthday, so he'll be 20 next May. So he'll be if he comes out, he'll be a young guy when comes out. He's 227 pounds with a 31.7 BMI, and he's going to meet the speed score thresholds, I think. So, the age, size, athleticism, speeds type stuff, that kind of like really, really fits. And this is building up to be one of those guys that can really rise up a board from maybe in your tier 4 or tier 3 or tier 4, maybe even lower than that, maybe not even known, to somebody that makes it up into the tier 2, maybe even tier 1 if things continue. And that's the thing. We got to see it over the full season for it to continue. But so far, the numbers look really good for him. What's interesting is the one thing I look at for running backs, yards per team play in year 2. Actually, he got pretty close to his age adjusted number for year 2. So it was actually one that I wasn't completely out of. The profile wasn't completely out of coming into the season. It was kind of like more of the middle of the pack type of guy with like him being weighted higher because of where he was from an age perspective. But this year he's putting up numbers that are going way up on the chart, like very, very high for year 3 chart. And that reminds me of a lot of profiles in the past where year 1 and 2 were kind of okay. Year 2, especially okay. Year 3 goes off. And running backs, you don't necessarily need the out production in year 1 and 2. Year 3, if they have that crazy high production, that's good enough for me. And then you pair that with like him getting good draft capital, and that's the type of profile that then makes it into the high tier 2, maybe even tier 1 type of thing. And so if we can just see this continue over the full set of the season, I'm excited about where he could be at the end of the year. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, for what it's worth, before the game today, his elusive rating was 206.
206. So that's
a little better.
I was looking at the numbers. That's what I was saying. He's like 206.2. And again, he had a really good game today. So I would have to imagine that's going to stay above 200 going into next week against Ohio State. When you're looking at my big board, I have Travion in top 5, and then I have Benson in top 9, and then it's kind of a drop. I don't know what to do with Raheem. I struggle. I don't even know. They lost to BYU. So Arkansas, if you guys are listening now, if you're live, they lost to BYU, which is a terrible loss. I don't know what he did tonight.
He wasn't playing.
Oh,
he wasn't playing. He was out last week too, I think.
Yeah, so that's not good. And then you look at Raheem, and then there's a bigger drop, because then that's where I have that cohort of Edwards, Shipley, Neal. I have Roma Dunze, Keon Coleman, Troy Franklin, all the wide receivers in a tier above those guys. So running backs, I don't know. It's a tough thing when you look at a 24 class.
I would also argue that Benson's trending downward right now. I mentioned. Yeah. We talked about it on the Dynasty show this week, and then he went out there and he was okay, but like it wasn't what we needed to see against Boston College today, and I'm concerned that those performances are going to keep stacking up. So
yeah, it's tough. I mean, just draft wide receivers. That's what we talked about. That's what we talked about last week, remember, as we go through there. All right, anything to wrap up the games? Any other highlights, any other games, any guys that we want to mention? Not a ton of true freshmen popping off this year. I haven't
Zachariah Branch. That's it.
I know. I feel like when I do my freshman spotlights, I got to talk about Branch every single week because I have no one else to talk about. Like, I don't even know if I'm going to be able to do a freshman spotlight next week because I got no one. I got you guys. Let me know. Let me know in the comments or the chat or something. Like, give me a freshman you want me to talk about because I don't know anybody out there that's had a good week. You guys know anybody that's had a good week for freshmen?
No. Dylan
Besides-
Edwards might be.
Oh yeah,
right now.
I guess I could talk about Dylan Edwards. I don't want to talk about Colorado fans. They
Also,
came after
they're
us.
losing. They're losing by 7 with 2
Dante
minutes
Moore
left.
looked good. So Dante's still having it, but I already talked about Dante Moore. I can't talk about any of those guys anymore. In there. And hey, shout out Jaleel Farouk. You're my guy. You're always going to be my guy. 6 catches, 126 yards, a touchdown for Oklahoma tonight. All right, we're going to wrap this up for the last 10 minutes here. We're going to go through it's kind of awkward-ish because we're going to kind of be listening to it, but a Devy mock that happened in late July. So I'm just going to kind of go through the first round and then just pick a guy that kind of stands out to you where their value was. So here was how the Devy draft went in July, and this is how crazy Devy can be. So just be aware. Now, this draft I picked had really good drafters in it. Not all of them do. So this one did have some good guys in it. I think maybe Christian was in this one. There was some guys in this one that, I think Jay was in this one too. But 101 was Caleb Williams, 102 Marvin Harrison Jr., 103 Drake May, 104 Travion Henderson, 105 is Emeka Egbuka, 106 is Nicholas Singleton. If we stop there midway through, anything stand out to you that's wrong?
No.
Pretty chalk.
Still like it. For now.
Okay, then 107 is Raheem Sanders. 108 is Quinshawn Judkins. 109 is Xavier Worthy. 110 is Quinn Ewers. 111 is Brock Bowers. And then 112 is Evan Stewart. I bet you all could guess what pick I had in this draft. I had the 112. But what do you think about these last 6 picks, Christian? Anything pops off in there?
I wouldn't be drafting those running backs that high in Devy right now. I wouldn't be drafting running backs that high in Devy right now. Travion, even we've talked about Quinshawn a bit. I think Xavier Worthy still belongs in that range.
Yes, he does.
I don't
game
know.
today. He had a good game today. He had
I
a
wasn't
touchdown. He actually caught the ball, which is always an improvement for Xavier Worthy. But yeah, he if I look at the box score, I know that he had like a 49-yard touchdown pass where he made a guy miss on an out when it was tied 10-10. 4 catches, 56 yards of a touchdown. Yeah, a 44-yard touchdown.
It's fine, I guess. But I think that's a good range for Quinn. Brock Bowers is probably underrated. I've been saying that for a little while now. I think Brock Bowers and Devy drafts probably should be pushing for that 105, 106, 107 range. But yeah, and then Evan Stewart. He belongs a little higher as well.
Mm-hmm.
I would just say that there's lots of risk there in those picks right now. Those first 6, I feel like they're all doing really well, and there's a lot of safety, I think, in those first 6 picks. The next 6 picks, I feel like there's a lot of risk in those. We're not exactly sure what those guys are going to be in the NFL. And so I think there's risk there.
Yeah, that's how I would say too. Bowers is probably underrated. Where do I have Bowers on my big board? I have him at 8 or 7. I'm at 7, so it's close.
That's
it's
about
close
right.
in there. All right. I think there's a case to be made that Evan Stewart is the second best wide receiver in college football. I'm a hot take guy though. Jay just puckered up a little bit.
I mean, yeah. I'm kind of into it. The fact that he's producing on a Texas A&M team that's not very good and has produced over the first 2 or season and a half, not even quite that yet, but I'm intrigued. I think we're gonna go into next year and he's gonna be locked in as a top 15 pick, and that's why I think you're comfortable drafting him here.
I'll be honest. I'm not very good at quarterbacks. I'm not very good at running backs, but I'm pretty good at wide receivers. Like, I have a pretty good track record for wide receiver. And Evan Stewart just reminds me of just an absolute stud there. I know Jay's going to talk about Luther Burden, but I don't care about Luther Burden right now. He can talk about him in the draft. Just shut up. All right, so 201, we have Drew Aller. So you can tell I had the 112 and the 201. 202 was Braylon Allen. Zachariah Branch was at the 203. Excuse me. 204 was Will Shipley. 205 is Jonte Cook, the second, who has not, I don't even know if he's produced anything yet. And then the 206 was Luther Burden. Obviously, Burden looks like a value there. He probably could have went after Evan Stewart. Is that probably where we're at with Burden?
One above Evan Stewart, I'd say.
Okay. You just had to throw that in there, didn't you?
I think you could throw Stewart and Burden in the 107 to 112 range and feel good about it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
There's a lot of
Yeah,
value to be had for wide receivers in the second rounds and these things.
Zachariah
I'd
Branch
say-
was value there too. He should probably be in the 10s, like right after Singleton, actually. I'd say.
Right,
Sorry,
Jay.
Jay.
I'd say Emeka is probably wide receiver 2. So I'm going to squash your Evan Stewart. And I think Malik Neighbors is kind of getting close there too. So I put them in there too. But yeah, I understand what you're saying there with Evan Stewart. I think Evan Stewart and Luther Burden have had really good seasons, and I'm going to beat this horse again. That 2025 wide receivers look really good. There's 5-6 of them that are like phenomenal. So I'm so excited for that class.
Yeah. All right, let's go to the last 6 here in the second round. See where you guys are at. Let's check. So we had Connor Weigman at 207. A lot of these quarterbacks. 208 Malik Neighbors, great value. And we had talked about Malik Neighbors being a value all offseason. He was in the 3rd and 4th round. Now we're here in the 2nd round. 209 is Malachi Nelson. 210 is Barian Brown. 211 is Trey Benson, and then 212 is Cedric Baxter Jr. I love all those picks, to be honest with you. Connor probably the only one I'm a little nervous about. Connor Weigman. But other than that, I love all those picks. I think they had great value from 208 down to 212.
Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah, Trey Benson at 211 is kind of interesting. This draft was probably done earlier in the season as we got closer. Everybody started to hype up.
Now,
Trey
this
Benson
is late
again.
July. Late July. I looked at the timestamp. Like July 28th is when we did this one. I don't know. Trey Benson was going to the 5th round before we all started talking about him, and then all of a sudden,
that's true.
Second round. All right, let's just go through the 3rd round here. So Antonio Williams at 301. I don't know what's going on with Antonio. I don't know if that's a Clemson thing or how's that looking there. 302 Donovan Edwards, which I thought was a value heading into the season, which now looks like probably properly rated. Branson Robinson missed out for the year. He's injured. Justice Haynes hasn't seen the field yet. McMillan, Ted McMillan from Arizona. I think he's going to be a 2nd round pick next year in Devy. So that's probably increasing value there. Brandon Ennis at 306. Kate Klubnik, 307. Roma Dunze, 308. Looks like a value right now. 309. Troy, my boy Franklin. And that was not me. So no one can out there and say I'm a homer there. Dante Moore at 310. 311 is Katron Allen. And 312, Mekhi Lemon. Pretty good value in that stuff. There's not a lot of where I'd be a little bit worried. Probably Antonio Williams and Donovan Edwards are the two I'd be most worried about in the 3rd round.
I know he's a freshman, but Justice Haynes also concerns me a little bit. Just with that Alabama running game, hasn't looked great. And they
Riddell
still
had a good
have
game today.
He did, and Jace had his moments, but I like seeing the freshman in Alabama go take a share of the backfield, and Justice hasn't really done that. And so I don't know. In the 3rd round, I get it. I just would prefer some of those guys that went behind him, like Katron. I would take before Justice Haynes. And Katron's going a little later. Dante Moore looks like just a stupid value here in the 3rd. But of course, that's a freshman quarterback. You're going to have that. So, good value. I like that round a lot.
Anything, Jay?
Ted McMillan looks really good. That's a second rounder. That's a 2nd rounder guy. And it's funny, going in, we were there. I guess we were on Jackson Arnold. A lot of people are on Malachi Nelson, but if you were kind of ordering him now, I think you'd have to really think about putting Dante Moore at the QB1 for that year right now, just because of the playing time that he's gotten, what we've seen from him so far. And that kind of lowers the risk of, versus the unknown type of thing. Jackson Arnold, we've seen him on the field, but Dante's starting and playing a lot. So, getting him at 310, like you said, is just incredible value here.
I think there's something to say about, if you're out there and you're actually playing Devy, you're drafting freshman quarterbacks, which is always a hit or miss prospect. I think the 2 quarterbacks we were the highest on here was Dante Moore and Jackson Arnold, who have played. You've seen them out there, and you have seen that. understanding that, like, yeah, sometimes talent is like, yeah, like, hey, they'll be out there. Malachi Nelson's going to be out there. I don't know if that's always a guarantee sometimes, though. Like, because sometimes they see him in practice and they realize he's not there yet. And then they get a transfer quarterback. And now, like, think of Ty Thompson. So Ty Thompson is one of those guys that people really heavy on in Oregon. And now we're never going to see Ty Thompson play. Harrison Bailey. Shout out Harrison Bailey. You're still out there. You scored a touchdown last week. Has not, like, when you're looking at like him, he didn't pan out. So, like, I think from that perspective, Malachi could be in that perspective. Like, I think he's going to be good. We don't know necessarily, but getting Dante Moore at the 310 when he's going to be a first-round pick next year, I guarantee you Dante Moore. That is like the risk with drafting Devy quarterbacks, freshman quarterbacks, and then the upside. Now you have a first-round value with the guy you got in the fourth, third round, and you can move him for NFL pieces. And I think that is where you have a lot of that. We don't have a ton of time to go to the fourth round, but those are the 3 rounds. So, what are your overall takes just about, like, I thought a pretty good value. These are really good picks, though. Like, these are good drafters. There are some other ones where we were talking to some guys doing drafts like right now, which is weird, but in mid-season, and they're getting some crazy values in the third or fourth round that aren't there. So, any overall thoughts about just the Devy draft in general?
Shout out to all these drafters. Did a pretty good job in projecting forward, and I think, when we look back on this, there will probably be 5, 6, 7 bad picks. Maybe more, but right now, almost 101 through 312 is looking like they still have a shot, and sometimes you don't see that even this quickly into a season.
My observation would be, don't be afraid to go young. Todd talks about that a lot in the Patreon, but guys like Carnell Tate in the fourth round make a lot of sense. Getting those freshman QBs. I mean, Carnell Tate looks like the remarkable. Next Marvin Harrison Jr. He looks remarkable. It really is. And so, go for the talent, go for the guys that are going to be NFL stars over the later production as a type of role.
Yeah. I mean, Damian Martinez in the fourth round looks really good. I'm going to be talking about him as my risers. ETN in the fourth round. Those guys, Deuce Robinson, if he stays as a tight end, those guys look good there. So those are the areas. Big games next week. UCLA at Utah. We can't really pick the game. I guess we could pick winners if we want to do it, because there's no spreads yet, because the games aren't done yet. So yeah, UCLA at Utah, big game there. Can Dante Moore go into a hostile environment? Utah, that's a massive game for Dante. If he can go in there and beat Utah, that's saying something. Oregon State at Washington State, the only Pac-12 teams left. That'd be a good showdown there. Colorado at Oregon, we're going to see there. Colorado's down right now, 21-14, right? That's
at halftime. Yeah,
at halftime, 21-14. Man. Wonder if they're going to wear sunglasses when they walk out. What do you think? What do you guys have the odds there? Ohio State at Notre Dame is a massive game for both programs there. People, like to talk up Dion, but what Marcus Freeman's been able to do this year has been good. Like, shout out to Marcus Freeman for building that program out there. Iowa and Penn State as well. I just want to see if Iowa is going to hit 24 points again. That's kind of what my thing is with them. Any overall lasting takes, Jay, before we get out of here?
No, I'm good. Oh, actually, I do have one.
You always.
What do you guys think about? What do you think about Brian Thomas Jr.? He's popping on numbers at LSU. So I don't know what you guys think about him, but something that stand out the first 3 weeks is just he's a big part of the LSU passing game. Somebody that kind of fell off my radar a little bit, and starting to get back on. As somebody that's interesting. All those LSU wide receivers are important to know for NFL purposes.
Yeah, I talked about him a little bit when I did my reading the room for LSU wide receivers. He's got the size and frame. He just hasn't been consistent catching the football. So if he can't catch the football, I think he's going to be right there.
Yeah, I'm in on that too. I think Kyron Lacey has gotten a little bit of run there. I'm not entirely sure, but
those guys have all kind of countered each other a little bit.
They have. And Malik's the clear one, and today was definitely a stamp on that. But I'm curious to see if Jaden Daniels can kind of hold up that passing attack. He did today. Did you guys see he broke the record for completion percentage with a minimum of 20 attempts or something like that? 88% from Jaden Daniels. What's happening? That's better than Joe Burrow.
Jaden Daniels is the best SEC quarterback right now, though. If we're being real, he is the best SEC quarterback.
Yeah, probably.
Jackson Dart, Jaden Daniels, probably top 2.
That's rough.
Well, let's not hate on our boy Jackson Dart. All right, so we appreciate you guys watching. Hey, if you like NFL fantasy, we go live every morning, Sunday morning at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 Eastern. So you can jump on 30-minute show. It's quick. Get your start sits answered. We crushed it last week. We hit some really good start sits, and I would not have told you to sit DeAndre Swift on Thursday. So that is where my expertise comes in. So I appreciate you guys. We'll check you guys next week.